Okay. So welcome to our 2022 programming and 5th anniversary of Rising Together Women's History Month at Lehigh Valley. Rising Together Women's History Month at City Hall and Lehigh Valley were inaugurated in 2017 in partnership with the Allentown City Mayor and the Allentown City Hall. The platform founded by Ngozi Bell was launched by NIAPA, a 501c3 organization headquartered in Allentown that is focused on education, socioeconomic development, women, and youth. The annual event started with a modest 80 attendees to reach well over 800 attendees. Our vision is to annually gather women and girls of all persuasions, age, and outlook to use their gifts as proponents of unity and to establish extraordinary outcomes. Our mission is to manifest the power of partnership, friendship, love, and unity by lending an ear to hear, a hand to help, and a heart to heal. Our platforms will allow each person to have a springboard to what she is most gifted for. To mark this 5th anniversary, we are hosting 2 key conversations with men. Yesterday, we hosted a lively conversation with Mayor Matt Twerk. Today, as we will chat with the former CEO of Just Born, Ross Born. Ross Born was Just Born CEO till 2022. Just Born was founded by Ross's grandfather, Sam Born, in 1923 in a small retail shop in New York City. Just Born moved to Bethlehem in 1932 and is a top 10 candy company in the US. Ross was inducted into the National Confectionery Sales Association's Candy Hall of Fame and served as chairman of the National Confectioners Association. Just Born is home to confectionery brands such as Peeps, which I love, Mike and Ike, Hot Tamales, and Goldenberg's Peanut Chews. I am thrilled to welcome Ross Born today. Ross, thank you so much for making the time. Would you just say a few words, Ross?
Well, Ngozi, thank you. I'm very honored to be in the presence of 2 awardees, and you'll be speaking about them in a few minutes. But I was especially impressed with their credentials, what they've done, and we'll talk a little bit about leadership today, and they certainly are leaders. And I'd like to get back to the real program, recognizing and honoring the awardees, and then I'll make some comments.
Okay, that sounds good, Ross. Thank you so much. And so this year's History Month theme is providing healing, promoting hope. The National Women's History Alliance chose this theme as a tribute to the work of caregivers and frontline workers during the COVID-19 pandemic, and also to recognize the many ways women have provided healing and hope throughout history. For our organization, our theme is Rising Together, our bold beckon to valor, vitality, and values. We chose this theme because of a 2-year-plus global pandemic and economic battle that all of us have been through. We believe that valor, values, and now vitality are prevailing. And as it should be, women played important roles to get us here. So Ross, I'd like you to just take 5 minutes and tell us about yourself, include some of the challenges, some of the triumphs that shaped your journey, certainly some of the women that maybe went, were along the path with you. And I am curious to know how the name Just Born came about.
Well, let me start out by saying that I have the privilege of being the grandson of the founder of Just Born. My grandfather, Sam Born, he was a Ukrainian Jew. He actually grew up not too far from Kiev. When I say he grew up, he was 15 when he left the country back in 1905. A very courageous and smart man, even at age 15. And when he got to this country, he knew how to make candy, chocolates, because he had, on his journey to the United States, he had lived in Paris for a short time, and he got a job in a candy store. He needed something to do. He didn't have any background in candy, but he learned very quickly, smart man, to make French chocolates in Paris. And when he got to New York, he knew how to make French chocolates, and he started up in having a little an operation with a candy store. And It grew. He ended up, when he was doing his work, he was mostly doing the candy making, and he was letting someone else do the retail shop work. Unfortunately, his partner left town in the middle of the night with the money, and my grandfather had to pay off everyone, and he did, 100 cents on the dollar. He decided retail wasn't for him, and he went into just manufacturing in Brooklyn. But the reason for the name Just Born, my grandfather's name was Born when he got to this country, and a window dresser in his retail shop had put a baby scale in the window, and it was a play on the words, Just Born. And my grandfather felt that he always made fresh candy. So it was Just Born, it was just fresh. So he was well known for that. So that was my grandfather. And I'll talk a little later about the women that influenced me and enabled me to get to where I got to, and where I still am today. So, but Sam was quite a guy, and he asked his two brothers-in-law to come into the business in the 1920s, and they did. They were partners, moved to Bethlehem in 1932. So we've been in Bethlehem now for 90 years.
Wow.
We've been there for 90 years, same location. We've upgraded the factory, of course, and the processes and the equipment, but we've been there for 90 years, and we've been very proud to be part of the Bethlehem and the Lehigh Valley community.
Wow, that is fantastic. The story about his partner, I'm sorry, I'm not laughing because it's good. It's just, it's almost like a folk story about his partner absconding with the money in the night, and he had to start all over again. That's an amazing story. I never knew that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And yeah, we'd love to know more about the women in your life and the women that journeyed this successful entrepreneurship and business journey that you've had as we go on. So I just wanted to point out a few things, because this is Women's History Month. This is the last day of Women's History Month. So of course, our listeners want to hear about women and some of the impact and how that all works within industry. So I'm going to talk about a few things that we've all been looking at, which I know you're very familiar with. So one of the things that we know is that the SEC in 2021 approved a proposal by NASDAQ to increase the number of underserved groups in US company boards, right? And we also know that some statistics that with the labor force tells us that about 41% of managers in 2021 were women, right? So this is great improvement. 33% of those in the highest position in management positions were white women. When we look at Latinas, Black women, and other women, they took up a smaller amount of it, but women in general, made progress from that perspective. So in 2021, and there's the reason why I'm calling out some of the statistics, because you'll see a little bit of a pattern. Women made up the highest share of managers in human resources. This is no small feat. However, what we tend to see is in certain areas in industry, women do very well. Women do well in healthcare. Women do well in, like I said, in human resources, in food services. So one of the things that we would like to learn about leadership as we talk in general is how you see some of this and what you see as the future of women and the future of workforce as these opportunities come about, or as opportunities can be for diversity can be created. So I'm going to ask you a few questions. So just respond in any way you feel, but help us appreciate some of your perspective on some of the things that you've seen. So one is, why did you join Just Born, right? Because a lot of times, and you'll see how I'll weave some of the statistics into this, because this helps me sort of get a better sense of everything you've done with your life. Why did you join Just Born? Was it an entrepreneurship thing? Did you have this entrepreneurship bug, or were you just fascinated by business, or was it just a candy? that made you join? Why did you join? Why do people make that decisions to say, I'm going to go into this? Or were you forced? Like it's the family business, you have to do this.
Well, I'm going to weave a few statistics into my conversation as well.
Okay.
First of all, since I was a kid, I had wanted to be a doctor, and I did a lot of work in the medical field. When I was in high school, I was an orderly. They called them orderlies back in the day at Sacred Heart Hospital for a summer, and I did volunteer work, and I did research later on in college, and I was a chemistry major, and I was really involved in science. I was also a sociology major, and well, it's too long a story to go into as to why I decided that I would go to law school. So I am a lawyer, and I want to speak about some statistics. When I was looking at law schools, most of the law schools, almost all of them, the proportion of women to men was about 2 to 8, somewhere around there, maybe even less. So it was only 20 to 25% of students being women, and some schools were less than that. And that had been evolving. It had been lower earlier on, but now I went to a university that had pretty much equal numbers of women and men. It was a small school. That's where I met my wife. I'm a lucky guy. Married now 47 years almost. Same woman. And I found a law school that had a split of 50-50. It happened to be a school on Long Island called Hofstra School of Law.
Australia.
They had just opened their School of Law 3 years prior, and it's an old university.
I know.
I had a wonderful education there, and it was a very diverse group. I was actually in the minority when it came to age. I had graduated from college about 6 months, 7 months before I went into law school, 7, 8 months actually. Many of the people had, many women were in their 40s when they, and this was a full-time law school. This was day school. This wasn't night school. And it was wonderful. We had a wonderful experience together. But I thought that was an appropriate mix of people, getting a variety of minds, different experiences, different maturities. So my law school career was wonderful. Now, how I got to Justborn is that a year before I graduated from law school, my father, who had been involved in the business in Justborn, he was the president. He called and said that he was thinking about slowing down a little bit, and he was thinking maybe he and his uncle would sell the business unless I would consider coming in along with my cousin. Well, made a few phone calls. Even though I had no experience in business, I decided to go into the business after I graduated, and I did take the bar exam and passed the first time, which is a good thing. Mm-hmm. So I do have my license and I keep it. So don't mess with me. All right.
That's what I'm being really
so I went to Justborn not really having a clear understanding as to what was involved, and over the course of almost 44 years. I started getting the hang of it. And now I'm actually finishing my first month of retirement. I would say retirement is anything but slacking off. I'm busier than ever. Mm-hmm. I still have 3 screens in front of me. I used to have 4. I'm busy. So that's where I came in at Justborn, and so that gives you a sense as
Yeah.
to my background.
Russ, that is so interesting. In fact, you just you said something that is really uh, unexplored by many people. I'm assuming that when you were in college, this was in the 70s.
Yes,
In the 70s, and Hofstra had a 50-50 split with women and men. So
at the
what
law
happened
school.
at the law school? That's impressive. What did that continue? What happened? Because when you look at statistics, we believe today that we have made all the improvement. What you're telling me is there were schools like Hofstra that had done some really important work to enable this to happen. Obviously, the environment must have been very conducive for women, very welcoming to everyone. Can you talk about that? Is Hofstra still the same? If you don't know, that's fine. But what changed? Why did we have that, what seems like a decline, and then now we seem to be trying to build back up?
Well, I can't quote all the stats on what's going on in all the law schools. I can tell you that generally, there are many law schools that have a greater proportion of women than men today.
Okay.
The same as in business schools and in engineering and many other professions where women had been a very small proportion of the people at the school. That has really changed. One of the things that I believe we should all keep in mind is that this kind of change takes time. I believe we're going in the right direction. One of the things that needs to be more clearly understood is back in the 80s, I recall a lot of concern about, gee, there are no women in management. Very few women in management. But there were very few women in the business schools. And there were very few women that even aspired to go into management. Not necessarily because they couldn't do it, but they didn't know that that was an option back in the 70s and the 60s. So it takes a little bit of time. There's a lag time. And that's important to understand so that there's not too much discouragement. Oh my gosh, we only have 40% represented or 30% in the engineering department. Well, that's changing a lot, but it's taking time. But look at the feeder schools, look at the education that people are having and who's getting that education, and we're seeing a change.
Yes, yeah. No, that's true. That's engineering is my field. I mean, what we've seen is engineering in particular, women have in many schools actually hit parity. USC, for example, for the first time, they had 51% of their enrollees as women and then 49% as men. So a lot of progress. Where we're seeing in the science field, my first degree is in physics. In the core sciences, there's still a lot of lopsidedness, but that is also increasing. So that's really exciting because of all the STEM programs and all the engagements that are happening there. So but you're learning about what was happening then and now, and then putting that together, and then the time that's required, that is really good information. I honestly appreciate that. I found that really exciting. So I want to ask you another question, right? As a leader, one of the things I've always wanted to ask leaders is, are there some goals that you realized and afterwards you decided were not as gutsy as they could have been? And then are there some goals that were too lofty for you to achieve? Because at the end of the day, leaders, we love leaders and we talk about all the wonderful things they've done. And I think learning about some of the things that you look back and say, that was not really a stretch goal, or something that you're like, wow, that was a bit too ambitious. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. First, I'd like to look at leadership. Now, the way I view leadership is that there should be leadership at all levels. Oftentimes people say, he or she is a leader because the title was CEO or president or some other such thing. I've always been of the feeling that people at all levels at different ages can be leaders. My grandchildren, we have 4, in their own right, they take leadership roles. And they're between the ages of 5 and 13. But I can tell you that when it comes to people that were working at Justborn, at every level, people have to feel that they can have some semblance of leadership. Lead by example. We hear that a lot. Lead by example. Well, that's not just for CEOs or presidents. That's for everyone.
That's right.
Lead by example. So there are things that I'd like to suggest from a leadership standpoint of what a CEO does, but it quite frankly can translates to what other people can do as well. Mm-hmm. So this is a little bit of a play on words, but CEO, what does a CEO mean? Well, most people say Chief Executive Officer, right? Mm-hmm. Chief Executive Officer, very highfalutin title. And by the way, the important thing is don't get hung up on the titles. We didn't do that at Justborn, and we worked together. All right. But I had a number of roles as a CEO, and as I say, a play on words. So I'll throw these out. Chief Engagement Officer. So, all right. So my role was to make sure that we established, maintained, enhanced relationships with all of our stakeholders. And there are many. No matter what you do, there are many stakeholders. Think about it, not stockholders, but stakeholders, people that had a stake in the outcome of our business, whether it's our customers, sure, and certainly the people that were employed. We called them associates. That's what we called them, because we felt that they were associated with our business, not just employed by the company. And of course, we did have stockholders, but how about the community? How about all the suppliers? So there are so many people that worked on behalf of the results of Justborn. I call them stakeholders. So Chief Engagement Officer, mm-hmm. Another Chief Environment Officer.
I like that.
How do you create a supporting culture? Something that supports, in a sense, it's how did we get our stakeholders and certainly our associates to do their best, to reach their potential. Now, I'm going to stop here for a moment. I have 3 more CEO descriptions, but it's important to understand, again, leadership at all levels. So if one is a manager or one is just working on the floor, how do you, as that person, create that supportive culture? And quite frankly, leadership at home, when you're home, how do you create that supportive culture? How do you create and sustain relationships? Yeah. So it's not only for CEOs, it's for everyone. No, all right. Okay. So here's another play on words. Chief Ethical Officer.
I like that.
Chief Ethical Officer.
Yes.
Being responsible. How to set an example. Remember, leadership, yep. Set, lead by example. That's what we did.
Yeah.
Chief Enabling Officer. How do we make sure that our associates, in the case of the business, are highly engaged? All right. How do we make sure that we give them the opportunities to be highly engaged? Really, really important. And then the last one that I'll mention today, Chief Enthusiasm Officer. All right. You have to have a passion. for what you're doing. And I want to remind everyone that's listening that just doing work for the sake of the work, in the end, it's not going to do the trick. You should want to get up in the morning or at night, depending on what shift you're working, what your hours are. What can you do to really feel that you're enjoying not just having a rah-rah time, but making a meaningful contribution in whatever way that you say, this is a good thing for me to get up and get to work. And if we're talking about work, you should want to enjoy. Now, every day isn't going to be wonderful.
Yep.
Every day isn't going to be easy, but that's okay. Yeah. If you think that in the end, you're making a contribution. But the environment that you are in has to be supportive of that. Yep. So one last comment on this question is that I wanted to make sure that we had an environment where people who came in, and whether they were associates or whether they were vendors, suppliers, guests, that they felt welcome and appreciated and that they counted, that they meant something. They had a name, which is their brand. They had a reason for being, and they were recognized as such, that they were making a contribution. So calling people by their name is really important. Knowing who they are and treating them with respect. And when you sit back and think about these ideas, these are not ideals. This should be natural. This isn't rocket science to treat people with respect and make people feel that they're appreciated.
Russ, what you just said, I was going to ask you about diversity and inclusion. And quite honestly, what you just said are the principles behind diversity and inclusion. So, environment, very critical. That's what makes people feel included. The other thing you said was being ethical, considering that everyone, and I know you can use ethical in different ways, but setting an example of caring for people, of being in an environment that is honest, that understands what it means to make sure that everyone's values are matter. You talked about being chief enabling officer, being highly engaged. As you were speaking, I was like, oh my goodness, these are a number of the principles that people talk about when they say what makes a healthy, diverse, and inclusive environment. And I want to kind of turn the question a little differently because of how you've already set this tone for us. And by the way, I want to be able to use this, so I'm taking permission to use at least 3 of them. I know a couple of them, but there were a couple you said that I was like, wow, this is a good way to think about it. So I'm taking permission. Please don't sue me when you see that as part of my repertoire going forward. But women said that their success for many of them was because they had managers or male leaders who cared about them, who championed them, right? Who created an inclusive environment. I want you to just talk about this a little bit in light of these principles and these perspectives that you put together. And I like that you said that these should not be ideals. These should be the norm. So can you talk about that in light of some of these things that you called out?
People make their own success. All right, it's really in their hands. Mm-hmm. So how does one make success? It's looking for the right environment. So when people are looking for an opportunity, a job, in whatever field, understanding how important it is that the environment be right. Mm-hmm. that it isn't sure people want to make a living. Typically, on a scale on the top 10, it's about number 8 in terms of how much money you make. Now that's only when you get to a point where you're not just making a minimum wage. So we're over, if we get over that there's so many critical factors that are involved in a workplace that's productive and happy, and that someone will feel appreciated, employee will feel appreciated. The people that you've spoken to, they have a role in creating that environment as well. I was just reading an article, it was recent article about how people influence others. And one of the examples, which is so true, you're driving along the highway, you're driving on the highway, and if people are driving with respect and they're driving with at the appropriate speed and using their turn signals and so on, not tailgating, it actually influences other people to be respectful. Even on the highway, you don't know these people, you're not talking to these people, but there's an influence. When people are speeding or tailgating or not using their turn signal, it adversely influences people. So your environment, you are a product of your environment. It's really important. So I would encourage people to be thinking about the environment that they're in and how they can influence in a more positive way that environment. I want to say something else. I had the opportunity last week to visit a wonderful exhibit of Vincent van Gogh, very famous artist, okay? And I came away with a greater appreciation for him and his work and his life. I needed to recall some of the history because it's been a while, but I'll make it simple. Van Gogh, this is back in the around 1870, 1860, in that area. He wanted to be an art dealer. He failed. He liked art. He could do some painting, but he wasn't really ready to develop his talents in art. So he decided to become a preacher. He failed with that too. And he said something to the effect of, he said, anyone aspiring to a position in society must go through a time of great difficulties and exertion. Success can depend on the little things. Now, it's really key to understand that there's a lot that goes on, and I know it's not easy for people who have felt that they haven't been given a fair shake. But there are opportunities out there with people that understand how to do more than just accept people. Acceptance isn't a positive word. It's like tolerance. You ever hear somebody saying, well, we want to have more tolerance. When you tolerate somebody, you're just kind of putting up with them. That is not positive, all right? There was an exhibit that I visited several weeks ago called Embracing Our Differences. Embracing Our Differences. So I'm a big believer in embracing people's differences, rather than just tolerating them. So it's really important to seek an environment that will support that effort and support that culture. And if it's not there, what do you do to make it there? And if you don't see the opportunity, then look elsewhere.
Mm, very
And
good.
you can complain, you can have you can be bitter, I get it. But in the end, look for an opportunity that's going to be supportive. A supportive culture is really going to make the day.
Yeah, I'm telling you, Ross, you're hitting a few things on all five cylinders. I liked the illustration on tolerance because some people actually think it's positive. So I completely agree with you that we're not to be tolerated, we're to be embraced, right? And then environment created for support because it's mutual, right? Support begets support, and when you create that environment, everyone benefits. So that is beautiful. I like the way you ended that. So I want to ask a question about the larger economy, because one of the things we saw in the Lehigh Valley through some poll that was done by Muhlenberg University was that the economic of the region was critical to people's morale about being here in the Lehigh Valley. And since you've been here, you're part of this community, you've been here for a long time, what do you see as the most important role that businesses have to the economy at large? And what are some of the best practices that leaders should adopt to ingratiate themselves into the community's economy and help people recognize that they care about that? Businesses are there to make money, we understand that, but also part of their responsibility becomes creating this economic environment that hopefully lifts as many boats as possible. So can you speak to that?
Well, do you have a few days and then we can have more conversation? The opportunity to have a good business really depends on having a good community. There are not very many good businesses that are in communities that are not supportive or not economically sound. So one really begets the other. There are wonderful associations that we have in our Lehigh Valley. The Chamber of Commerce as a good example. What a wonderful group of people. I am absolutely amazed to see that we have a chamber that has grown to be, I believe it's now the 7th largest chamber in the country. But what leadership at the chamber has done, and they're really wonderful, has created smaller units that people can identify with and be associated with, but it's part of the larger whole. And they've done a really remarkable job. The economic development group, another group, certainly with Mayor Turk now in the city of Allentown, and we have mayors of other cities, and then there are many other communities, and how they are reaching out to businesses. They should be doing that to have an appreciation for what business plays, and businesses of all sizes, not just the larger businesses, but the smaller one as well. United Way has done a very good job of reaching out to the community, the Days of Caring, the work that they're doing to influence leaders at all levels, not only the CEOs, but at all levels, to make more meaningful contributions of financial resources as well as time and opportunity. The schools, they are really the litmus test for what a strong and vibrant community can be. We have work to do there, but we have some wonderful schools, people doing a tremendous job in educating our young people. The community colleges, we have 2. They are among the best in the state, and they're offering wonderful opportunities. The VOTEC schools.
Mhm.
This is another important component of education that we often don't think about. When I graduated from high school, I went to Parkland.
Mhm.
We did not have a VOTEC until I graduated.
Mhm.
And the year after I graduated is when the VOTEC opened up. Too bad, because I would have enjoyed taking a course at the VOTEC. In fact, if I were the superintendent of the school, I would put as a requirement that every high school student has one course in the VOTEC, just one. Pick whatever you want, so that there's more respect for the people taking the VOTEC courses, which are very technical.
Mhm.
And there are some really smart people that are doing excellent work, and we're counting on the technical schools to train our people to do the kinds of things that we need to do in business and in the community and for our own existences. If you need an air conditioning repair person,
Yeah.
You don't have that. You might be the CEO of a company, but you don't know how to fix an air conditioner. I don't anyway.
I'm sure don't.
So I'm not sure. There are a lot of pieces to the puzzle.
Yeah.
It does need good leadership at the top. When I say at the top, in government,
Mhm.
in business, in people speaking about the challenges and creating opportunities from those challenges.
Mhm.
So it's not easy, and we've been through many challenges, and I've grew up in the Lehigh Valley, so I've seen a lot of changes, some good, some less than good. But by and large, we don't have a choice. We have to convert challenges into opportunities.
I like that. I like that. And what you said about VOTEC, the practical experience that's required, it changes the way the mind thinks when you get an opportunity to do those things. So
absolutely.
It's a total game changer. So I'm going to ask you a few more questions, then we'll bring on our awardees. So when the history of the Lehigh Valley or the history of just born leadership is written, how will men describe your leadership? How will women describe your leadership? What would you like to be noted the most for?
Well, I actually don't think too much about me. All right. It's really about opportunities that have been created.
Mhm.
I will tell you that when I look at employment, and we've certainly had a track record in diversity. And why is that? It's because we needed people to do good work, that they wanted to be there. They had the ethical standards, they had the desire. And for me, and we encourage this behavior throughout our organization. We didn't look at someone, are they a man? Are they a woman? Are they black or green or white? Or it made no difference. Can they do the work? And when I say can they do the work, it's not just lifting something or putting something in a package, or all the different jobs that were had at Just Born, but would they be able to be engaged if given the right opportunities and being in a supportive culture?
Mm.
So whether it's a man or a woman was of no consequence, old or young. You know, I remember, and I still have a relationship with many of our people. We had a retirement party for a person in our production department, and he was retiring after 5 years. All right. And this wasn't unusual, but this is one example.
Mm-hmm.
He was 65 and he decided he was going to retire. But we hired him at age 60.
Wow.
Because age meant nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Can you do the work?
Okay.
Are you, and can can you get involved in the opportunities that are presented here? And he was wonderful. He was terrific. And after 5 years, I mean, it seemed like he'd been with us for a long time. So it's choosing those environments. You're not going to have as productive a time trying to change someone, a leader in their 50s or 60s or what have you, who has not looked at their enterprise in the same way. It's just, I think people are going to be beating their heads against the wall. You try, doesn't mean you can't try, but I don't want people to feel so frustrated and discouraged. And that's where you look for new opportunities. Before we finish, I was thinking about our conversation today, and I wanted to impart something that the listeners can look at some point. It's very simple to Google. What I believe is probably one of the most important components to leadership. And that's called emotional intelligence, or EQ. Emotional intelligence. All people have to do is dial in EQ, and they'll see it speaks to self-awareness, how people regulate themselves, how motivation, social skills, and empathy. And this EQ is not something that is, not everybody's going to have it. Everyone can improve the EQ that they do have. I want to stress that. I'll say it again. At whatever level you are, because there's certain natural tendencies, how people have been brought up, the environment that they've been in, that there's some people that their EQ isn't going to be all that high. You can actually increase your EQ. You have to get some training. I have a daughter who actually is a trainer, and she's certified, and she has trained people to expand and be more than they were in EQ. EQ is probably the single most important indicator for leadership. Emotional intelligence. And I didn't say IQ. I said EQ, which is really important. It's not how smart you are. You don't have to be super smart. And I know super smart people that don't have very much EQ. They're not good leaders. EQ. All right.
Yeah, thank you. In fact, what we'll do is as we put this link, we'll also put a link to that. And if you want to send some information on your daughter, that would be good. It's an area.
My daughter is, I have one daughter, a clinical psychologist, and the other one does a lot of management training. But I will say to all of the listeners, if they go to emotional intelligence, and the guru on emotional intelligence is a man by the name of Daniel Goleman, Goleman, Goleman. He's written books, has some great articles, but he really has nailed it. And this goes back 25 years, 30 years. Daniel Goleman, EQ, probably one of the more important things that I'd like everyone to take away from our conversation today.
No, this has been wonderful. And again, another area that I personally am also very invested in with emotional intelligence, or EQ, right? Emotional quotient, which is interesting. Yeah, so this is really good. Thank you so much, Ross. We're going to go now and talk to our awardees. I'm just going to announce them a little bit. We talked to, yesterday they were announced by the mayor in detail. So we're going to announce them and then invite them to say a few words and maybe ask you a question or two. So our Gatherers Award is being presented to Firuzi Desai, a social impact business owner. Firuzi received her award yesterday with the mayor, and we're mentioning it again today. And Living Positive Change Award is going to Deb Colitas, an entrepreneur who has been in the Valley for several years, helped a lot of people, works with cancer victims, victims, and also is a partner with Rising Together. So I congratulate both of you. And I'm going to open it up for Firuzi and then Deb to say a few words and maybe ask a question or two to Ross. Ross has a hard stop at 3, so let's see if we can get a question or two in. So Firuzi, do you want to go? Firuzi, are you on mute?
Sorry.
No worries.
Thank you very much for this award. It feels really good for, after teaching for 20 years in the Valley, to be recognized and given an award. It feels really good. And thank you very much, Ngozi, for having us here. And thank you, Mr. Ross, for, it was amazing. This whole 1 hour, I just couldn't stop listening to you. It was really good. Thank you so much.
Okay, Deb, we'll let you say a few words and then you guys can ask a question or two because we still have a little bit of a few minutes.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Deb.
Thank you. Ross, I'm going to add something to your list of your CEO. You were my Chief Empowerment Officer this afternoon. So thank you for the reflection of, the hard work that goes on behind the scenes. Thank you, Ngozi, and, Rising Together for the opportunity to be a part of this amazing organization to really bring strength, and what I love specifically about Rising Together, it is about bringing women together to empower all. That we can be a light where there is no light. We can find those that need support and those that are doing fantastic and be their cheerleaders. So again, thank you for this opportunity, and it's been a great afternoon to be able to spend some time with you.
So do you have a question for Ross? Do you have something you want Ross to answer? Anything, or he said everything?
I mean, I think my curious question is, how many peeps have you eaten in your life? But over time with things, and how did you manage that one? Because that would be the biggest temptation in that industry for me. But no, as you reflect upon a point where you would have done something differently, what is something that maybe you would have done differently during your, growth as a leader that you could have learned a lot quicker if you had just done it differently?
That's a really interesting question. I made plenty of mistakes, and I learned from the mistakes. We at JustBorn had a philosophy that one learns from mistakes. It's an opportunity to grow. So I guess I really didn't think that there are certain things that I thought about that, gee, had I known, had I thought, probably if anything, it would be to make sure that we appropriately evaluated the people that we were hiring and made sure that they were appropriately empowered. I like that word too. I've used that word a lot, and thank you. That's an extra E for me. And we try to understand what went wrong, because not everybody that started at JustBorn is still there. They're not. And there are different reasons why they're not there. And we've learned from that over the years, making sure that we have the right environment and making sure that the people that we're hiring are the right people for the right work, and that we're communicating well. Communications is something that I'm sure that we can all agree we need to keep working at all the time. So it's a never-ending opportunity. Some people say it's a never-ending battle. I like to look at it as an opportunity. In fact, I'm reticent to use the word challenge. When somebody says, oh, we have a challenge, I said, well, you have an opportunity. So that would probably be, I won't say, I have no regrets. I really have no regrets. There's things that we've done that we made mistakes on, that we invested in equipment that didn't work, or in launching new products that didn't work. That we made investments in customers and they went bankrupt. I mean, we have a litany of those things. You know what I said to that? We learn. Thank God we could keep going. We learn. So I think that trying to look for the positive is going to be a really important perspective that people at all levels should have, not just CEOs, but everyone. And the more you can get that into the environment, or look for those environments that encourage that type of thinking, the better. I will tell you that we've had situations where we've let someone go in key management role, because we found out that people felt threatened, that if not threatened physically, but that if they made a mistake, they would be reprimanded, or that they would be punished in some way. The consequences would be there. And what we did is we looked to try to remedy the situation, but sometimes you can't teach old dogs new tricks. And we had to let people go because they wanted to make sure that things were absolutely correct all the time. That's not going to happen.
Yep.
That's not going to happen. But we let them go. We don't let the people that made the mistakes go, because mistakes are an opportunity to learn. Don't keep making the same mistake.
Yep.
But mistakes are an opportunity to grow and learn. So I felt pretty good about that.
Okay, fantastic. It's 2:59. So I think, Firuza, did you have anything you wanted to add or ask real quickly?
Fine. It was really interesting. Thank you for having us here.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to leave it here. Ross, this has been wonderful. I hope if we ask you again, you'll come back, because I think we have to do a part 2. This has been incredible.
Lovely. Yeah.
Be available. All you have to do is give me some notice. We're on.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for watching.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're going to stop the recording now.